Now, 3 strikes is one of those laws which I very much enjoy debating. Or one of those policies because it once was law, then it wasn't, and now it's going to be again. And so it is so much so one of the policies that I really, really like debating that, well, I wrote an essay at law school. And of course, I was defending it because why would you not? It is the most common sense thing to support and it's not ridiculously unreasonable. You'd be shocked to learn that the lecturer who marked my essay took a little bit of an issue with it, weren't a fan of my position. And as such, the nonsensical response I got for what was an insignificant introduction to university, if I'm completely honest, well, it was all I needed to know to realize this isn't where I belong. I'm not going to waste my time at a law school if, well, I'm getting failed because I held the wrong position on a policy. Now, this was very, very topical at the time. This was right at the point Labor was in the process of repealing it. And so, well, that's why it came up as one of the options. And so maybe when it came up as an option, they were a little bit surprised that I was opposed to it because maybe they don't think young people are going to subscribe to such, I don't know, common sense beliefs. Funnily enough, actually, in the very, very little Zoom call I was in when we were assigned this essay, I was in there with Jamie Lee Ross. Now, if you don't know what the 3 strikes law, put concisely, it is a 3 strikes and you're out approach to criminal justice, which works in stages. For your first qualifying offence, meaning one of 40 violent and sexual offences that result in a strike, you are handed a strike. This carries no additional penalty, and a second strike would mean whatever term of imprisonment a judge hands you must be served in full and there is no opportunity for parole. If an offender receives a third strike, the judge is required to impose the maximum applicable sentence with no opportunity for parole. With that being said, the maximum sentence may be disregarded for a shorter one if the judge considers it manifestly unjust to do so. Let's take something like aggravated robbery, for example. An aggravated robbery carries a maximum sentence of 14 years. Now, the first time you go in for that, you may get, 6 years, parole after 2, pretty reasonable. The second time around, of course, whatever the judge decides to give you that is not exceeding 14 years, you must do in full. There is no parole. So he may decide that, again, 6 years is appropriate. However, this time you don't have the opportunity for parole at 2 years. You're just there for 6 years and that's that. On the third occasion, and you get a third strike, well, then you're there for 14 years without parole. Now, I think that's a pretty good incentive not to do it. And I'm someone who has met people with 2 strikes and even one individual with 3 strikes, and that was prior to the repeal. And I'll tell you right now, they are not keen on doing it again. Many of them want to get out of the life because of this. Many of them wanted to see it repealed so that they could get out and commit a crime without having to worry about that again. Overall, it is a deterrent. So the clause that I just mentioned, though, the one where it allows the judge to use their discretion to decide it might be manifestly unjust, raises a few issues. And whilst I can appreciate the need for this in outlier cases, they are called outlier cases for a reason. And this clause risks being abused by judges who simply don't agree with the policy. As much as we like to pretend that people working in our legal systems aren't prone to political and ideological biases, ultimately they are. Now, judges with integrity may be able to push those biases to the side, but it would be naive to think that this is the case 100% of the time. As such, being concerned that recidivist offenders may not get the just consequence is very much valid. Ultimately, the last government's attempt to get rid of this policy failed miserably. It's now being re-implemented, and it's better than ever. Despite our little detour to the great criminal world, the great criminal nation of Aotearoa, we are 100% back, and this policy is better than ever. And forgive me for using the word, but it is a far more equitable policy, allowing for more just outcomes across the board. Not only has it added a new violent offence to the list, but it's reducing the benefit of guilty pleas and ensuring that only in circumstances where there is a sentence exceeding 24 months imprisonment is there going to be a strike applied. Admittedly, some of you may disagree and think I'm a bit soft, that perhaps these changes are a little bit soft. I disagree. Not because I don't think harsher approaches would be better in practice, but because I acknowledge the government needs to establish a level of bipartisanship for the policy moving into the future. The genius of the reintroduction of this policy is that it addresses much, if not all, of the concerns initially raised with it that justified repealing it in the first place. By reducing the ammunition available to attack it, you will retain more public support and ultimately keep it low on the opposition's priority to repeal again. With all that being said, the following argument in opposition to the three strikes law made me chuckle. And it was the following. Māori are overrepresented in the group of offenders who have received a strike. Shock. And of course, my first thought was, given Māori are greatly overrepresented in the criminal justice system, I would be extremely concerned if that was not the case. Imagine if Māori were as disproportionately overrepresented in the justice system and yet they were, let's say, not overrepresented in the amount of strikes. This would suggest that all of their crimes are minor, whereas it's actually very much the opposite. The reality is, and I know this is really hard for some people to hear, but Māori commit more crime than any other ethnic group, period. And we aren't even talking per capita. These are the raw numbers. If we look at court proceedings between December 2017 and December 2023, Māori were involved in 358,424 of them. Europeans had the second largest contribution with 275,847. This is the reality in New Zealand, and it's only made worse when we look at it per capita. Anyone arguing the three strikes laws shouldn't be implemented because Māori would be overrepresented doesn't actually care about Māori. They care about looking just whilst advocating for injustice. That's a core element of progressivism in the West. Look just, look moral at all costs. No matter how nonsensical it is, look just, look moral, because that is what life is all about. No matter how many people you hurt in the process, no matter how many people you oppress through your stupid, stupid ideology. Instead, we should be working with Māori communities. We should be working with them to stop recidivism, to stop the generational cycle of reoffending. But no, that's far too difficult. Why would we do that? We wouldn't be able to grift off this whole, we are victims. This is all the fault of colonization. That would all have to stop. And as such, it's the very people who sit there and pretend, absolutely pretend, that Māori are not to blame for the statistics, which are actually aiding in the statistics remaining as bad as they are.